Is it not the example from Native Americans that when somebody comes to you and says, but we are going to educate your youth, that is actually almost as bad as if they had taken them from the start. And possibly that's the plan. Well, so one of the things that I started thinking about was this idea of the insistence of the use of identity in a term by the gender sexuals. And so as I started to really mull this over, I then saw this ridiculous mural of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and I'm like, it's kind of fascinating now that there's this sort of Obeah type worship of what were fundamentally criminals, but they're worshipped because really, I mean, obviously what it is that it's that the evil powers that they had as dope dealers, dope addicts, abandoning their children, stuff like that. It's, Breonna Taylor was a dope dealer. All of that, the evil energy empowering the members of the cult. And it's just a type of practical magic that to this day, I mean, it's being used here right now, by BLM, with them openly admitting that they're into Orisha type stuff and West African, always Ifa Ogun religious spirituality, which it's one of these things of, that's fine. And they admitted it. And as usual, the socialists are tied up into Satanism. That's what it translates to any Christian. There's just a bunch of black people who they've given up completely on the Holy Spirit and are going with spirits of vengeance, of revenge, and fire. Because that's what they identify with. They identify with an angry people who want vengeance and blood. I think it's important to note in conservative white America, they've conserved their identity. They actually know who they are. We just got it in the form of the song Rich Men North of Richmond. The beauty of this song is that it immediately kind of showed me this kind of thing of this is a man who he can identify as, one, not being rich, two, not being one of these guys north of Richmond. He can identify who he is and who his people are, and that's why the left is so angry and insulted, because they have no identity. They're non-people now. They're these people with loosely kind of the same sort of affiliation with some set of quasi-socialist, quasi-Marxist ideas, but because of the nature of such Marxist ideas and because they're not united in their effort, every group is approaching it from Marxism. So, you owe me money, I'm this. You owe me money, I'm that. You owe me money, I'm this. You owe me money, I'm that. See, that's why, if you ever look into Marxists, at some point, if they don't unite, they all kill each other. That's kind of the beauty of how this ends up by the end of it, is that, I mean, it's messy. It's a messy way of solving the problem, but it is the way the problem solves itself. That when there's a fervor for Marxism in any culture, that if the Marxists don't end up having a united front, the Marxists all will turn on one another. Will turn on one another in absolutely fascinating and colorful ways. So that's why, and a lot of us are seeing this, where these kind of people will call it, wokies or whatever, but we all know they're Marxists, and they're all turning against each other because of their different factions. So the part about it that I'm going to thoroughly enjoy is when you really have hard white guys looking at these educated, quote unquote, people saying, but what are you, homie? And that's where it's going to come down to, is at some point, well, you're not black, you're not Asian, you're definitely white, you're dressed up like a girl, but you have a dick. Do you not see how you don't fit in with us either? And then it will become very clear, like, that's what this is really about, isn't it? You refuse to fit in. You've gone out of your way, you've refused to fit in with anybody, and now you have no identity other than educated. Which then that brings up another whole thing. Okay, blue enclaves are enclaves that are ruled by educated white women, often who are divorcees and are single mothers, and kind of the larger clan of women who help in that, as Briefolt mapped out in The Mothers, like the Briefolt mapped out. No, it is true that there is a village to raise a child, but it's when you're still villagers and you're backwards and you can't even cultivate crops without having, like, girls cast spells on them under the moonlight to think that that's how the crops grow. It's the way of a backward people. That's why we have individualism now. And we're not a pack animal like some Villiers of the forest or something. So these are people that, because they have no ethnic identity anymore, they're not Scandinavian, they're not French, they don't like identifying with things that are white, even though they can't help it. Like gender sexualism, that's very white. Like black ethnic minorities are not like getting into it as much as they kind of hoped we would. So it's a white thing. It's an educated white woman thing, and that's why it's completely elite. Everything about gender sexualism is from the elite classes. It's from highly educated Jewish people and highly educated white people in academia and scholarship. It never has anything that it cites that says this is normal in other cultures, such as how they made up two spirits. That's make-believe. That never existed. There's no Native Americans who thought that. They didn't have a word like that. It's bullshit. So yeah, I'm just. This is what happens when people are deracinated. This is what happens when diversity goes horribly wrong and education saps the culture out of your youth so that they're nothing people. All they are is reduced to their sexual fetishes that they can't even do because they're too ugly.